Silence, applause and singing in France for the victims of the Nice attack. But as the country remembers the dead, there's a growing anger as well. Boos for the French Prime Minister over claims of his government's complacency over terrorism. Also this lunchtime, renew or disarm, MPs vote over the Trident weapons system. Tensions remain high in Turkey as 8,000 police officers are suspended following Friday's failed coup. And a school holiday with a difference. The teenager trying to become the youngest to sail around the North Pole.
This is the ITV Lunchtime News with Charlene White.
Good afternoon. On the promenade in Nice, at the Élysée Palace in Paris and all across France today, the French national anthem brought to an end a moment of silence and applause to honour those killed in the Bastille night attack in Nice. Officials are still trying to identify many of the 84 who died, while investigations continue into the motive of the killer, Mohamed Boulel. But while the country stood together, there was anger as well, with the Prime Minister booed as he arrived in Nice. Well, in a moment, we'll be live with our correspondent Emma Murphy on the beachfront there. But first, Sally Biddulph reports on the nation's tributes.
At midday, France stood still, a country in mourning, remembering those killed in the Nice attacks. The Prime Minister, Manuel Valls, leading officials paying their respects in Nice along with thousands of others. Close to where so many were killed, a cannon broke the silence before spontaneous applause and the national anthem. In Paris, President Hollande stood in the courtyard of the Interior Ministry, fresh from talks about the security threat. Here too, the silence was broken by the national anthem. As France mourns, more details have emerged about the man behind the massacre, Mohamed Boulel, the father of three, apparently scouting out the Promenade des Anglais before the attack. Although so-called Islamic State have claimed responsibility for it, the government says they found no link connecting him to the group. However, Boulel's family disagree. Speaking in Tunisia, his uncle said, "He's a single man. He's depressed, despised by his wife. Islamic State found an opportunity, they seized it. As soon as they found a man with a weak personality and who needs counselling, they take him on." People want to know why Boulel did it and how it was even possible. Today, those tensions bubbled over, with many in the Nice crowd booing the Prime Minister. France may be united in grief, but it appears increasingly angry about how its government is dealing with the reality of terror. Sally Biddulph, ITV News.
MPs will vote today on whether to back the renewal of Britain's Trident nuclear deterrent. They're expected to approve the replacement of all 4 nuclear submarines at a cost of more than £30 billion. But the Commons vote is likely to expose deep divisions within the Labour Party, as our political correspondent Libby Vina explains.
The woman who could authorise a nuclear strike was in Wales today, meeting the First Minister. Theresa May is convinced that Britain's ageing Trident submarines should be replaced. But Labour's leader is not, and his party remains deeply divided, although today he wouldn't be drawn on the issue.
Why are you going to vote against your own party's position on Trident?
Nice to see you all here too. Really nice of you to come, and I hope you had a really nice morning in the sun. Goodbye.
Technically, a parliamentary vote on renewal isn't necessary, as ministers have already decided to go ahead with the new submarines. So is this largely symbolic moment all a trap set to embarrass Labour?
It's up to Labour to decide, but at the election last year they were in favour of the nuclear deterrent, and in fact every successive Labour government in office has always supported the deterrent, and I hope this won't be two-party political. I hope we'll get the biggest possible majority for renewing a nuclear deterrent that has served Britain very well.
Currently, the UK has 4 Trident submarines. The Vanguard class are due to be replaced in the early 2030s. Taking 12 years to build with an additional 2-year sea trial. Work on the successor programme must begin this year. Labour leadership contender Angela Eagle backs renewal.
I want a world free of nuclear weapons, but I think the best way to do that is actually to negotiate them away multilaterally, and that's why tonight I will be voting to maintain our Trident nuclear deterrent.
Mr Corbyn's deputy also disagrees with his leader.
I think the independent at-sea deterrent has kept us safe for half a century. We're in disagreement on that. I think he's wrong.
CND today handed in a 40,000-strong petition to the Ministry of Defence, demanding Trident be scrapped. Jeremy Corbyn may support that, but many of his MPs will vote against him today, while some will abstain. An easy win for the government seems inevitable. Libby Thina, ITV News, Westminster.
And Carl Dinnan is at Westminster for us now. Carl, this vote will expose further problems within the Labour Party. How deep are the divisions over Trident?
Well, they're split 3 ways on an either-or question. Official party policy is to renew Trident. A lot of MPs will go with that. As Libby explained, Jeremy Corbyn is against it and will vote against. And then there is a front bench position, which is to hold a review into whether it's needed or not. And many of the front bench are planning to abstain on the grounds that this has all been done just to embarrass Labour. It has to be said, they don't need an awful lot of help in that regard at the moment.
Mention that, we're of course are in the midst of the leadership challenge. What's happened this lunchtime?
As I speak, MPs are meeting in the House of Commons to hear from the leader and the 2 potential leaders, the challengers. Now, of those, the newest one, Owen Smith, has suggested that either he or Angela Eagle should drop out of the race. Her spokesman told me she was of that view too, that only one of them should go forward to challenge Jeremy Corbyn when this is put to a vote of the membership. But they haven't reached an agreement on how they will decide which one of them drops out. And that may come down to how many MPs nominate each one of them over the next 2 days.
OK, Carl, thanks very much. Nearly 8,000 Turkish police officers have been suspended today, suspected of having links to the failed military coup. Dozens of high-ranking governors and civil servants have been sacked and more than 7,500 arrested as the government cracks down on what it called the virus behind the coup. Richard Pallow has the latest.
Are you happy you failed? These high-ranking officials are asked. They are full generals, brigadiers, rear admirals, all accused of helping lead Friday's unsuccessful coup, and today paraded. More than 6,000 military and 7,500 people in total have been detained. Outside, on the streets of the capital, Ankara, tanks rumble to reassert and reassure. In a faltering voice and with tears in his eyes, the Turkish Prime Minister repeats a question his grandson had apparently put to him. Why are they killing people? Most who died were pro-government. And so with their position strengthened domestically, the worry now internationally is that the ruling AKP party will push the country into even deeper authoritarian rule. Clear warnings are already being served.
We will certainly support bringing the perpetrators of the coup to justice, but we also caution against a reach that goes well beyond that and stress the importance of the democratic rule being upheld.
Kerry also says he has received no request to extradite Fethullah Gulen, the US-based Islamic cleric accused of masterminding the coup. If Turkey's government has re-established control, its parliament remains in part in ruins. The building was a casualty of the short-lived conflict. Frantic clear-ups continuing ahead of a first cabinet meeting since. The British Foreign Office says the situation could still be volatile, but flights to and from the country are returning to normal. Those who have wanted to return home have mainly done so already. Tens of thousands of UK holidaymakers, though, are continuing their trips. Richard Pallo, ITV News.
Our correspondent Neil Connery is in Marmaris on the Turkish Riviera area, and I'm sure there are quite a few Brits who will be planning to head there this week due to the school holiday starting. Is it safe to travel to Turkey at the moment?
Well, look, down here, things have certainly calmed down since Friday night. A terrifying few hours. Then overnight, there was gunfire, grenades exploding, helicopters overhead. Speaking to some of those British tourists caught up in that, a very traumatic experience. Having said that, they're determined to see out the rest of their holidays now because, as I say, things have quietened down here at least. But clearly for people who are coming to Turkey in the next couple of weeks thinking of cancelling, their problem's going to be this. The advice from the Foreign Office, although it is to stay vigilant over here, they haven't put any restrictions in place as such or advised any. Flights from the UK have resumed, so anyone looking to cancel a holiday here in Turkey is going to have trouble trying to claim those costs back on their travel insurance.
Well, as we're hearing, we've had those police officers being suspended and some being arrested. In your view, how is everything we've seen over the last few days likely to play out?
Well, as you say, 8,000 police officers suspended this morning on suspicion of having links to this failed coup on Friday. Some 6,000 military leaders and judges in detention. President Erdogan and his ministers are saying what they are doing here is tackling a virus within state institutions. But his many critics inside Turkey and beyond, and governments abroad, are watching this very closely. They're fearful that he, in response to this failed coup, is going too far, the crackdown that we're seeing. And I think the coup itself clearly is over, but the implications of this for Turkey, its future direction, and for the wider region really are just starting to play out and emerge.
OK, Neil, thank you. Well, the attempted coup in Turkey is high on the agenda in Brussels today. It's a meeting of EU foreign ministers. It's also Boris Johnson's first summit as foreign secretary, and that means more talk about Britain leaving the EU. Our Europe editor James Mates is in Brussels for us. So, James, let's start with events in Turkey. How is that being received?
Well, considerable concern about the response to the coup. Now, when the coup attempt happened on Friday night, the EU was immediately backing President Erdogan and saying that democracy must be protected there. But the actions since have made them very worried about, really, whether democracy is surviving even now the coup is over. And particularly it's the dismissal of the judges, the wide-scale arrests, and the talk of a restoration of the death penalty. Introduction of the death penalty, said a German spokesman today, in Turkey would mean the end of Turkey's EU accession negotiations. US Secretary of State John Kerry also very worried, reminding the Turks that democracy is an essential requirement of NATO membership as well.
Well, this is Boris Johnson's first visit to to Brussels since becoming the Foreign Secretary. What sort of message is he hoping to convey?
Well, the original message that he arrived with was that, frankly, nothing changed. Yes, we're leaving the EU, but we go on as before in terms of our relations with Europe. You can hear what he says now.
The message I'll be taking to our friends in the Council is that we have to give effect to the will of the people and leave the European Union, but that in no sense means that we are leaving Europe. We are not going to be in any way abandoning our leading role in European cooperation participation of all kinds.
Suffice to say that claim that in no sense does this change our relationship with Europe being treated with some scepticism, particularly in amongst an audience of people who aren't particularly pleased to see him. The French Foreign Minister called him a liar just last week. He's not their favourite person here in Brussels. A lot of bridges to be built.
James, thank you. Still to come, the young adventurer, how this teenager is spending the summer attempting to rewrite the record books. The man who shot dead 3 police officers in the US state of Louisiana had filmed a series of videos urging people to fight back against the treatment of African Americans. Gavin Long was killed by police during a shootout yesterday. From the US, our Washington correspondent Robert Moore reports.
Less than 2 weeks since the Dallas ambush of police, and now yet another memorial of flowers is emerging. This time in Baton Rouge, a city in Louisiana that witnessed a moment of madness yesterday. The gun battle left 3 police officers dead, another critically wounded. Among those killed was Montrell Jackson, the father of a young child.
This is my message to you.
And this is the gunman, Gavin Long, a former US Marine who served in Afghanistan. He posted videos on social media hinting he would not be joining protesters against police violence.
You gotta fight back. That's the only way a bully knows to quit. He doesn't know words. He can't understand words, I promise you. He doesn't understand protests.
Baton Rouge has seen angry protests on the streets ever since the police shooting of a black man, Alton Sterling. Sterling's aunt has now pleaded for calm on all sides.
When these people call these families, and they tell them that their daddies and their mama's not coming home no more, I know how they feel because I got the same phone call. No justice, no justice, no peace. That's what we're calling for. Stop this killing. Stop this killing. Stop this killing.
Stop us. We will keep coming. The people will keep coming. The political temperature across the country is also rising.
Black Lives Matter.
As the Republican Party convention gets underway in a few hours, massive security is in place to protect the delegates. The concern of protesters here is events in Dallas and now in Baton Rouge will entirely distort the message of the Black Lives Matter movement.
It's not Black Lives Matter versus police. It's people who want to stir up racial division versus people who want unity. And in that case, Donald Trump is clearly on the racial division side.
Certainly the American conversation on race, policing and violence is in danger of being drowned out in this fiery election season. Robert Moore, ITV News, Cleveland.
A man has been jailed for life for the rape and murder of a teenage girl 34 years ago. The killing of 17-year-old Yanula Yani at her home in North London had remained a mystery until James Warnock was arrested last year on completely separate charges. Ivor Bennett is at the Old Bailey for us this lunchtime. Now, Ivor, can you talk us through how he came to be convicted?
Well, it had been a cold case for so long. As you say, it happened 34 years ago, back in 1982, when Margaret Thatcher was in power. 17-year-old Yanula Yani had been on her way home from her parents' shop in North London to make dinner. Her parents followed just half an hour later, but that's all the time it took James Warnock to do what he did. They came home to discover their daughter's body lying naked. She'd been raped and strangled to death. Detectives travelled to as far afield as Australia to try and track down her killer, but it turned out he'd been living just around the corner, half a mile away, the entire time. The 56-year-old part-time Tyler was only discovered by chance, though, last year when an undercover officer caught him sharing indecent images of children online. When his DNA was taken, it was found to be an exact match with that taken from the crime scene all those years ago. But in stark contrast with the time it took to catch him, the jury to hear took just 2 hours to reach their verdict before the judge this morning sentenced him to life in prison, adding that Miss Yani had endured a terrifying ordeal and was killed in a way that was cruel, brutal and without mercy.
Ivor, thank you. The British technology company Arm Holdings is to be sold to a Japanese firm for just over £24 billion. SoftBank has confirmed it will purchase the Cambridge-based company, which designs microchips for smartphones. It employs 4,000 people. And this afternoon, the World Anti-Doping Agency will release its findings on allegations of Russia's state-sponsored doping at Sochi Winter Olympics in 2014. If they're proven to be true, Russia could face a complete ban from next month's Summer Olympics in Rio. And finally, when 14-year-old Ben Edwards goes back to school in the autumn, he'll have some incredible stories to tell his classmates. He's well on the way to become the youngest ever person to sail around the North Pole as part of a 7-man crew attempting the historic journey in an aluminium boat. Well, the team set off from Bristol and will be at sea for 2 months, arriving back at the end of September. Sejal Karia reports on their gruelling challenge.
It is a perilous voyage in one of the most inhospitable parts of the world. A journey in which 14-year-old Benji Edwards is aiming to break a world record by becoming the youngest person to circumnavigate the North Pole.
Cheers! Cheers! Cheers. So, to commemorate us going past the Arctic Circle, which we did about half an hour ago, I'm going to throw a message in this bottle over the side.
Before setting off, he was mindful of the dangers, but not unduly concerned.
I'm worried about running out of snacks. We've had to restock already, so that might be a bit of a problem. We've got 15 kilograms of hot chocolate, so that should be fine. But as far as anything that's actually dangerous is concerned, would worrying help?
The worrying is being left to Ben's mum, who is along for some of the journey.
When we agreed to him going and had pressed the button on saying yes, he could go, I had a completely sleepless night worrying about whether we'd done the right thing.
They're sailing on the North About, an aluminium-hulled yacht, an expedition that would have been impossible until recently. But the melting polar ice cap means it is, and that is the principal reason for undertaking the journey, to highlight the impact of climate change.
I don't think actually we realise what we're affecting the rest of the world, certainly in the Antarctic and the Arctic. And I don't think people realise what's going to happen there will actually impact on us directly in the UK.
And there's a personal mission too. Benji is in near constant pain because of a long-term condition with his gut. He aims to raise thousands of pounds for charity. A remarkable young man on an epic and treacherous voyage. Sejal Karia, ITV News.
Well, good luck, Ben. Well, that's it from us this lunchtime. There's more, of course, on our website at itv.com/news. I'll be back alongside Mark Austin with the evening news at 6:30. The latest where you are follows the national weather. But from everyone here on the Lunchtime team, enjoy your afternoon. Goodbye.